General David Petraeus, welcome back to the Issue
Good
Is.
to be with you, Alex.
Congrats on the book. You talk
Thanks.
about warfare. You think about where the U.S. is right now, and you think about conflicts in both Israel and Ukraine and other spots around the world. What do you see as the U.S.'s role right now when it comes to some of these conflicts around the world?
Well, I think we have a very significant national security interest, an economic interest in helping Ukraine, for example, helping Israel, helping maintain freedom of navigation through the Red Sea, whatever it is around the world. This is not charity. It's in our interest to do this, and in the interest of our allies and partners who help us with many of these. In fact, if I could, I think that we face the greatest number of challenges and the most complex array of challenges since the end of the Cold War at least, and maybe since the end of World War II. If you think about the competition with China in the Indo-Pacific, Russia, obviously. In fact, if you think of the U.S. as the guy in the circus who has to keep a lot of plates spinning, has help from allies and partners with a number of them. The China plate's bigger than all the others and more important. The Russia plate is very substantial. There's still North Korea. There's Iran, probably 3 different plates, nuclear program, support to Shia militia, and then their missile program. You have individual Islamist extremist groups around the world that we still need to keep an eye and pressure on. There are cyber threats of various types. There are domestic populism issues that create challenges. All of this, again, very, very substantial number and great complexity. And I think we have to take the lead in the world. And we do it, again, not for charitable reasons, but because it's in our national interest to do so.
I know right after the Hamas attack on Israel, you said that it was possible to eliminate Hamas. Do you still think that it's possible to eliminate from Hamas?
Well, what I said is to destroy Hamas, which actually in military terms means to render Hamas incapable of accomplishing their mission without reconstitution. I think it's possible, and that's how I put it then as well, but very, very hard, and it remains to be seen, frankly. Israel has, in the first 3 months, destroyed Hamas largely in the northern area of Gaza, some in the central and some in the south. Of course, the leader is now believed to be in the south and underneath ground and tunnel complexes under Khan Yunis, probably surrounded by not just fighters, but by hostages. So a lot of very tough fighting going on. Israel very conscious that it can't keep 7% of its workforce in uniform because of the impact on the economy, the challenges of carrying out this campaign, concerns around the world, understandable concerns about the plight of the Palestinians in Gaza, the crying need for additional humanitarian assistance. But I do believe that Israel should destroy Hamas, and I believe we should help them by providing. They're not asking us to fight, they're asking for assistance. I think it's right also, as they are seeking to do, to dismantle the Hamas political wing. Hamas cannot be allowed to run Gaza again, and then obviously to get their hostages back. But there's some very tough additional decisions that need to be made, big ideas that need to be agreed, such as who will administer Gaza after this. And I fear that it's going to have to be Israel. There's no hands going up in the region to do this. There's no competent, capable, trustworthy Palestinian entity waiting in the wings in the West Bank to come over on the backs of Israeli tanks, and they wouldn't want to do that anyway, perhaps. So that's a tough decision. And then how do you keep Hamas from reconstituting if they're able to destroy Hamas? And I think they need to clear, hold, and build. That's essentially a counterinsurgency campaign. They are rescoping what they're doing, using far fewer large munitions, more surgical, etc. But this is a very challenging, and we look, my co-author Andrew Roberts and I, at the situation since 1945, which is the subject of the book.
Sure.
We see no situation as fiendishly difficult as what Israel faces in an enemy who doesn't wear a uniform, who uses civilians as human shields, who has hundreds of miles of very well-developed infrastructure underground, holds hostages, knows the ground, and is very formidable extremist group.
Let's talk more about the book. You
Sure.
look at warfare, and you look at some of the same mistakes that are repeated over and over again. You say including by Vladimir Putin in Ukraine. What are some of those key mistakes that are made?
Well, it's not getting the big ideas right. So we lay out in the introduction the intellectual construct for strategic leadership that I used when I was the commander of the surge in Iraq, starting with that, then also used as the commander of the Greater Middle East Area of Responsibility, U.S. Central Command, and then Afghanistan and CIA. It applies in a civilian setting too. There are 4 tasks. You have to get the big ideas right. You have to really understand the context. Again, your forces, the enemy forces, the physical terrain, the human terrain, the neighborhood, how the country is supposed to operate, how it really operates, all the elements of society and dynamics, and craft the right strategy. Then you have to communicate the big ideas effectively through the breadth and depth of the organization and to everyone who has a stake in the outcome of that conflict. You have to oversee the implementation of the big ideas, the energy, example, inspiration, how the leader spends his or her time, the metrics, hiring great people, allowing those not measuring up to move on. And you have to very explicitly sit down and determine how you need to refine the big ideas as the context evolves over time. Vladimir Putin totally underestimated the capabilities of the Ukrainians and their determination to protect Kyiv, and the leadership qualities, frankly, of President Zelensky, who has been a very effective strategic leader. Overestimated the capabilities of the Russian forces, very likely underestimated the U.S. and allied response, made really quite a serious number of miscalculations. Whereas President Zelensky, very courageous, his first big idea is, I don't want to ride, I want ammunition.
Sure.
We're staying in Kyiv, my family's going to stay here, we're going to fight for it, we're going to mobilize the entire country in our war of independence, our fight for survival, and all males are going to stay in Ukraine. But the challenge is that although Ukraine has performed heroically and impressively, and we've provided a substantial amount of assistance, the outcome hangs in the balance as to at least whether or not Ukraine can liberate more of its territory and prevent Russia from taking more of it, which they're trying to do right now. Very costly, incremental gains, but they are gradually, very slowly accumulating. And the challenge is, of course, that Ukraine has a population less than 1/3 the size that of Russia and an economy less than 1/10 of Russia. And Russia has made changes, and they have carried out, again, they have learned lessons. They've determined how to put in very formidable defenses in particular, and they're just hammering Ukraine every night through the air with drones, missiles, bombs, etc. And so this is a very challenging situation. I strongly believe that it's in the U.S. national interest, again, not charity, and obviously in the interest of NATO countries and European countries, really the Western world, to provide the assistance to Ukraine to liberate as much of their territory as they possibly can, and to do this as expeditiously as is possible, especially when it comes to the decisions that are being developed in Washington, where this is taking, in my view, too long.
Well, I could talk to you all day, but we're short on time. You can get a lot more in the book, and your proceeds go to veterans charities as well. Yet another reason to support the book. General David Petraeus, thank you so much for being on, and thank you for your service to our country.
Well, that was a privilege, and so was being with you again, Eris. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great to see you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.